Today we are delighted to be joined by Alastair Cunningham and Diana Gray from Clans and Castles, a specialist tour operator focusing on the beautiful and historic scenery of the Scottish borders, but also offering a range of Outlander themed tours across Scotland. Their Outlander tours came about after the books were released and Alastair decided to introduce a tour focusing on the beautiful scenery that was included in the books. We can't wait to hear all about that infamous tour. Thank you both so much for joining me today. Why don't we start with you telling me a little about Clans and Castles and how the company started?
Well, it started and grew organically. I was writing a guidebook for a castle up in the northeast called Dunnottar.
Oh yeah.
And then I did marketing for Dunnottar, and then I started taking people to Dunnottar, and then I started taking people to other castles. And then people wanted to stay in castles, and then people wanted to stay in B&Bs after castles, and so the whole thing gradually grew.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's amazing. And how did you both become involved in the travel industry?
Well, I joined, Alastair was obviously had his company, and I joined in 2018 as a kind of apprentice really. And had learnt the ropes through Alastair.
Mm-hmm.
I've been involved in travel for quite a lot of my life. At one stage, I spent about 10 years running ski holidays for people from Scotland out to the Alps.
Mm-hmm.
And then I saw this opportunity to become an inbound tour operator.
Mm-hmm. And had you worked in travel before you joined Clans and Castles then, or was this like a new venture for you?
This was a new venture for me.
Mm-hmm.
I've always enjoyed travelling, and can tell you where to go abroad. But I loved Scotland, and regularly travel around Scotland. But I'd never put the two together in terms of work. So it's been brilliant.
Oh wow!
Really enjoy it.
That's amazing. So, what do you enjoy most about leading the tours? Do you have a favourite tour to lead?
I thoroughly enjoy the feedback that I get from the people I'm guiding, and the opportunity to present Scotland, which I love, and to tell all sorts of unlikely stories. I mean, true, but unlikely stories. About what we're seeing round about, and answering lots of questions. As Diana said to you earlier on, we did a tour earlier on this year in September, where I was leading with Tom Myers. We were leading a tour which went all the way around the west coast, Mull, Skye, Tornish, up to above Inverness, and then back to Edinburgh. I mean, what a fantastic opportunity in the autumn to be travelling around all these wonderful places.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. What about you? What is your favourite part about leading a tour?
I tend to do more the cultural shopping, that kind of tour.
Okay.
So I enjoy going to the city centres and pointing out the foodie kind of destinations and going and doing that. That's my speciality.
Yeah.
But we have guides for all sorts.
Yeah, well that is an important part of the shopping as well, isn't it? So you offer so many different tours spanning the whole of Scotland, as you've just mentioned, and I imagine you must get to travel and see some incredible places. Is there a standout location you love visiting while leading a tour?
I think that, well, there are masses of standout locations, but the first place that comes to mind is Glenelg on the west coast just by Skye, where there is this old ferry which is a manually operated turntable ferry, the last one in Europe. But apart from that, it's a delightful crossing between Glenelg and Skye. Sometimes we see sea eagles. And then near Glenelg, there are these extraordinary Pictish towers called Brochs. And it's just a lovely little forgotten part of the world.
Well, that sounds amazing. And what about you? Do you have a favourite city to visit in Scotland?
My heartland is Edinburgh. So even though it's grown and changed and lots of have been happening in Edinburgh, there's always a nugget or a secret street that people don't appreciate or had never been to, or a really interesting place to have square sausage in a butt, you know, that kind of thing. Yeah. So Edinburgh, people think, oh yeah, I've been there, done that, but there's a lot of different, I mean, another good one I enjoy is Dundee, actually, which is having a bit of a renaissance. But the last few times I've visited it, I love the energy and the size of it. So those are my kind of top at the moment.
There's always places to explore in the city.
Exactly.
So if you could only recommend one place for people to visit in Scotland, where would it be and why?
Goodness, well, I mean, one place that it would be awful just to take people to one place. However, I guess having spoken about Glenelg, I'd say Orkney. Orkney is just the most beautiful and the most interesting place, with these extraordinary Neolithic standing stones. And the tomb of Mace Howe, it's extraordinary. Go in June, masses of wildflowers, long nights, beautiful.
Yeah. My mum and dad just went on holiday to Orkney and they absolutely loved it. They went to visit where you were saying about as well, and their pictures were incredible, so sounds nice. What about you?
In lockdown, I have actually discovered Isla. And I'd never been, and it's been wonderful to go there. And I was a bit cynical about it because I've always heard good things, thinking, oh, I'm sure it's been exaggerated. And it really is stunning. The beaches are fabulous. I went with my family, so it was brilliant for children. Lovely whiskey, great places to stay. But also you felt quite far away and remote. It was just, I really was impressed by it.
Oh wow, that sounds really good as well. So I imagine you must have quite a wide variety of clients. Do you get many Scots on your tours, or are your clients mainly international?
They tend to be, we've obviously with lockdown, we've had quite a few UK groups, but we don't have any Scots as such.
Right.
But no, we get quite a few people inquiring from the UK, which has been really nice.
Yeah.
And people waking up to what's on their doorstep.
Yeah. And so how do you promote your business to the international clients? Because I imagine that that's quite a wide portion of your clients.
It is. So what we do is we have a nice following on Facebook, social media, and we have Instagram, and we are very lucky. Our clients are lovely, they're very loyal, so they tend to tell people about their wonderful holiday they've had, and we'll pass on our details. We have tried advertising, but it's interesting where people do come from. It's predominantly word of mouth, which reflects well on us, and we actually like that because then people know what they're coming to us for.
Makes you more trustworthy, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. So I can see from your website that you do your own research for each specific tour. So can you tell us what is involved when researching a tour?
Yes, what happens is we get an idea of a tour, like a Campbell tour or a clan tour, and we obviously, Alastair looks up the history, my colleagues in the office look up what would be interesting, what's still around and worth visiting, and then we combine that with a really nice place to stay. Is there ideally a clan castle that we could go and visit or stay in or meet the laird? And so we bring all that together and find out how long the person is able to come on holiday for, and put that in a package for them.
Yeah. And do you include aspects of history when you're taking the tour? Would you not write a script, but would you have points of interest to talk about at each location?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And what we try to do is you tell the story of something that happened in clan history, and then you go and look and see where it happened, or where the monument is to the person who made it happen, or something that's relevant.
That's the job of the guide, is to bring that history to life. And that's where my guides are absolutely brilliant at doing that. Because otherwise you could turn up and it's raining and you're looking at a pile of rocks. You know, how do you relate that to what I've been reading about on the plane over about my family history? So that's where I would recommend having a guide, is certainly if you're interested in that.
Bringing the research to life, basically.
Very much so.
A lot of our customers recently have discovered their Scottish heritage and have lots of unique places they would like to visit linked to their own ancestors. Can you customise tours for people so they can visit these personal locations?
Yes, completely. That's complete. We usually get people emails say, I'm interested in castles, I'd love to see a Highland cow, I'd love to see some tartan, and could we taste some tablet? So we will then put all those elements together and weave the perfect holiday for them. And also throwing in things that we think they might like. But the other joy of a guide is whilst on holiday, they'll be telling them, you know, I have some lovely golden retrievers, and my guide will go, well, did you know where the golden retriever came from? And off you will go to the village, which is up the road, or that kind of, you know, personal insight. Once the guide has spent a couple of days with the person, they've then learned that they love knitting, and my guide will be able to say, this is where you ought to be meeting Morag who can knit. It's bringing that personal bespoke element to the tour.
So it can be moulded while they're on the tour then.
Completely.
Essentially.
Absolutely. That's the advantage of not being in a big coach, but being in a minibus. And you can say, well, if you're interested in that, then we'll go up there and have a look.
We can do that.
That's the benefit of just it being completely personal.
Also, we're quite sharp with our tours that we don't overcook them. You know, we're not saying 10 a.m. loo stop, 11 o'clock stop here, 15 minutes. We have a range of things that we suggest that you will see in that day, but depending on weather and times and what has caught the imagination, you'll see how that day progresses. Sometimes you might not see that thing on that day, but you'll catch up with it the next day, or you've seen an amazing golden eagle instead. That's what's nice, is that we don't try and put people into boxes. We try and let them be on holiday.
Exactly. Like if you got to a location and they were enjoying themselves, you're not going to make them leave because you got to 12 o'clock.
Exactly.
That's really nice. So do a lot of clients come to you after they've done their own in-depth research into their family trees and clan heritage?
Yes, we can get amazing emails of people, can't we, Alastair, saying, I've worked out I'm once a Fraser, you know, 8th generation, and my mother married, and it's really impressive. And they just need, sometimes they ask us if we can recommend anyone else to help them, or they would like someone to guide them to the various gravestones and churches or the church records of their family.
It can also require a bit of diplomacy, because an awful lot of people believe that they're descended from both Mary Queen of Scots and Robert the Bruce. And so you have to kind of move them slightly away from that to the people that we can actually identify, and take them to those places.
And have either of you done any research into your family tree?
I've done a little bit. Alastair's led clan, haven't you, for the Cunninghams?
I've done. In fact, I believe that there are still 2 clan Cunninghams in America. And I have led tours for both of them.
Oh wow, that's so cool.
And yes, it's very rewarding. And it's also prompted me to do a little bit of my own research to find out which one of the Cunningham castles I am most likely descended from. I haven't quite joined up all the dots yet.
No,
but
it does take quite a lot of time to do your family tree research, doesn't it? Need to devote a lot of time to it. So, do you have your own clan connection, Diana? I know that
I'm a Lowlander,
is
actually.
Oh, okay.
So my family are actually, in theory, related to Alastair's. I'm a Reed, and they were Cunningham Reeds. So one of my family is head of the family, but of course we're not a clan as such. Yeah. But we're a family because we come from Ayrshire and Lowlands.
And do either of you ever wear your family tartans?
Yes, I do. Even though we're a Lowlander, I'm meant to have area tartan. That's what I've always been told. Yeah. And so I do wear that if there's an opportunity. I like it because it's a great colour. Yeah. So.
And I always used to wear my Cunningham kilt. If I'm doing a one day's guiding, I will wear my Cunningham kilt.
Oh, great.
And I'll put the kilt on, if I'm doing an 8-day tour, I'll put the kilt on for one day.
Right, yeah.
And occasionally I'd apply the Cunningham trews.
Oh, of course, yeah. Yeah. A bit more practical for a tour, pair of trews. So have you always been interested in Scottish history, or has your passion grown the longer you've worked for the company?
Well, a lot of people ask me if I'm a historian or studied history, but it really just grew from becoming interested in castles, and then you have to learn quite quickly when in the early days of being a tour guide. Yeah. And so yes, I did a lot of research, but I wouldn't say that I was interested in Scottish history from boyhood. No.
Yeah. It wasn't a passion that you've had your whole life. Yeah. It's definitely grown the longer you've been in it.
And I've absorbed it since I've started in the industry. It's amazing how you do pick it up.
Yeah. I mean, even working at Scotland Shop, it's obviously not a tour company, but you do get so engrossed in the history. It's just so interesting and intricate that you can't help learning more. So every month we celebrate a clan of the month, and we love learning new bits of history and digging into the often bloody and brutal stories and highlighting the lesser known bits of the Scottish clan history. With so many amazing backstories, are there any clans whose history you particularly enjoy?
Well, there are fantastic stories in every clan's history, and it seems wrong to pull one out, but the Campbells are really an extraordinary clan because they grew from virtually nothing during the Wars of Independence. And then they became really the dominant clan in the 17th century, with Campbells becoming Dukes of Greenwich and Dukes of Argyll and all the rest of it. Yeah. And the stories go from right up in the north, where the Campbells are coming is obviously a famous Campbell pipe tune, and that's because they were fighting the Sinclairs right up in the north near Wick, and then they managed to take over Corder Castle, and so you've got the Campbells at Corder. Yeah. And even down in the south, you've got Campbells. You've got Castle Campbell by Dollar. And in all these places, there are great stories. And they are they stood consistently against the majority of the Scottish clans. And 2 heads of Clan Campbell lost their heads. But they still didn't move one way or the other. Yeah. And so even though a lot of people hate the Campbells, they were absolutely true to Presbyterianism and to being anti-Stuart. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I mean, great stories all over the country for Campbells. The trouble is that if someone says, "I want to see my Campbell heritage," I mean, you could keep them busy for 3 weeks. Happily.
And I'm laughing because if we had other guides here, they would be saying the McDonald's. And of course, we don't want to have a clan battle now. So, it's quite a personal thing, but I do think that's fair of Alastair to say the Campbells are very impressive.
Am I allowed to come in with one story?
Of course,
I mentioned Donata Castle. Mm-hmm. I got quite friendly with the Earl of Kintore, who was head of Clan Keith. Okay. And he went out to the Grandfather Mountain Highland Games in North Carolina. Oh. And he was going around all the clan tents with his cranach and his 3 eagle feathers and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
And when he got to the gun tent, he said, "Oh, hello, and how are you all?" And they said, "Get out of here, you're not welcome here." Because the Keiths did massacre a lot of guns in the north of Scotland in the early 16th century. And so he decided that really something had to be done. And so in something like 2010, there was a pact of friendship was signed between the chief of Clan Gun and the chief of Clan Keith.
That's amazing.
I think technically he was the commandant of Clan Gun because there wasn't a chief, but somebody was standing in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So these
things like that happen in
they do.
And these things, they persist much more abroad than they do here.
Yeah, definitely, I would agree with that. So moving on to the Outlander Tours, I know that you were one of the first tour companies to create an Outlander tour, and you even had Diana come to meet your tour groups many years ago. So can you tell us more about that experience of designing the Outlander Tour and having Diana join your tour as well?
We were actually the first.
Oh, right,
Yeah,
okay.
we were the first company to do an Outlander tour. And it all happened because I was guiding some people, I think, from a cruise ship. And a couple of the women sort of buttonholed me and said, can you tell me about Outlander? And I knew nothing about Outlander. But then I thought there's an opportunity here. And I got in touch with Diana and said, look, here's what I'm planning to do, what do you think? And she said, that's great. And in 2006, we did our first Outlander tour. And 3 people signed up. But since then, they have, of course, gone from strength to strength, and the TV series meant that it really took off.
Yeah, it really boomed, yeah. And did that help the growth of your Outlander tour as well?
Oh, absolutely, yes. We probably doubled the Outlander tours once the TV series came on, yeah.
And is it still, would you say it's one of your main tours?
It is, yeah, it's still very popular. And the nice thing is, because we've been doing it for so long, people trust us. Mm-hmm. There's an element of the TV locations, but it's more, which is what Outlander's good at, of the history of that period, and looking at the Jacobites and what went on. Mm-hmm. And we're very lucky that Diana still puts on her website to use us if you're ever in Scotland. Yeah. She's been a great loyal friend to the company. Mm-hmm.
And she agreed in the early days of the Outlander tours. They all stayed for a night at Castle Stewart, just outside Inverness. Okay. And twice Diana joined us for dinner, which was really quite overwhelming for the people on the tour.
Yeah, no wonder.
But I think it made it for them, and they loved the photographs and all the rest of it.
Yeah, well, that is such a special touch to add to the tour, isn't it? Especially as a fan of the books. So how have you adapted and refined the Outlander tour since the TV shows come out? I imagine it's changed quite a lot maybe since your first tour in 2006, or you kept it quite
probably Alastair can answer, but in a nutshell, we've obviously included the interesting locations. Mm-hmm. So things like Blackness Castle, Doune Castle, and Craigmillar Castle, mm-hmm. Midhope, which is lovely, which is Lallybroch the programme. Yeah. So those are all lovely places to go and see. Mm-hmm. And the nice thing about our Outlander tour, as I say, it's not just for the people who watch the television. Often people bring their friends or colleagues or husbands, wives who have never seen it before. Yeah. So it's not all about just Jamie stood here. Yeah. This is, so I think that's how it's changed. Whereas before you were looking at the books, and obviously everyone was using their own imagination. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's almost always one person on an Outlander tour who had been dragged along by their spouse, normally the husband. Yeah. And they always enjoy it. Yeah. They always enjoy it. It as Diana says, it's by no means dependent on understanding the fictional storyline.
Yeah, it's still an enjoyable tour regardless of whether you're a fan of the show or not.
What Diana has been good at is bringing that period of history to life. And what we do as a tour is show that period of history within Scotland. And I think that's what people love coming, because they learn something, they see it, and then Outlander just reinforces that.
It's just another way of bringing like history and research to life, isn't it? So do you have a favourite aspect of the show, or maybe a favourite character or a particular chapter or episode that really resonates with you?
I really enjoyed the early parts of the show when we had the kind of clan camaraderie, when we had Jamie with his clansmen, and you know, for me it's costumes and what people were wearing. I really enjoyed that.
I really enjoy the costumes as well. They're really amazing.
And the different characters that you have within the clan. You know, we've got the chief, but we've also got all those ones kind of dragging their knuckles, coming behind, you know, they're yes, exactly, and it just makes me, it's good.
Definitely.
I'm afraid I have to say the same as Diana, because when you can imagine that from 2006 until whenever the TV series came out, people were always discussing who was going to play Jamie and who was going to play Claire and all the rest of it, and when it was going to happen, I was really nervous that it was going to be poorly done. And I was just so delighted that it was done with so much authenticity in terms of the costume, in terms of the use of the Gaelic. It just gave me enormous pleasure seeing that first episode.
It wasn't just rushed into just to make a TV show that they knew would be successful.
Precisely.
Properly, And although Outlander is mainly based in the Scottish Highlands, are there any interesting stories about the Scottish borders during the Jacobite period?
I think the short answer is no, because the borders was largely anti-Jacobite, and offensible units were raised to oppose the Jacobites. But the borderers didn't play any major role in the Jacobite risings. Of course, Bonnie Prince Charlie came through the borders on his way to Carlisle and on to Derby, and people mostly just shut up their houses and sort of locked up their daughters. But it was mostly a government stronghold, and. Some of the atrocities after Culloden were actually committed not by borderers but by people from the south of Scotland, who were in the government army at Culloden.
And obviously Outlander does focus a lot on the Jacobite period, but do either of you have your own favourite part, like time in Scottish history? Not necessarily the Jacobite period, but is there other periods of time that you really enjoy the stories of?
Well, I have to say Mary Queen of Scots.
Oh, I was going to say that. Because, yes, it's lovely. I was going to say that. Well, for me, it's the costumes and, the castles and her story. She was the ultimate female, who was really rock and roll then, frankly. All her husbands, all the drama she had.
But there's a sort of modern read across here, because she was such a competent woman. She was competent politically, and she was athletic, and she was a good horsewoman, and she was impressive when she met people.
So all of your tours sound so incredible, and if I was to book one for myself, what should I expect, and how can people get in touch to book their own tour as well?
Well, what you would expect is what do you want? So whatever people sometimes don't know quite what they want, but they know elements that they're interested in Scottish history, or they'd like to stay in a castle, but they don't know how. So basically they get in contact via social media or sending us an email, and we'll have a chat on the phone or via email and really thrash out what they want from their holiday, and we will put that together for them and hopefully see them 6 months later.
So do they just email you to start that conversation?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Email us or contact us via Facebook or Instagram. But yeah, just email myself, Diana at the company.
Okay, that's great. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. It has been so interesting to hear all about clans and castles and to hear all of the amazing stories of Scottish history. And I can't wait to see what your tours get up to next year.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.